I'd like to ask the panelists, in particular Mr. Geus, whether or not Australia and the rest of the world are really doing enough in taking advantage of environmental opportunities in the situation of economic downturn globally. Should we be doing a lot more than Australia and the rest of the world is doing?
Well, Mr. Boer, I think the answer is a clearly yes. And in my speech I already made the pledge for using this opportunity, so to say, which is a terrible thing, because, well, this opportunity is there, and of course nobody called for it, but now it is here. As I said, it's a terrible thing to waste this crisis, and the opportunity to do more fundamental changes, or to take more fundamental orientations to a better balance between economy and environment. History will tell us, but maybe it's now or never. Maybe it's now or never. The big problem, of course, is that if that is not internationally coordinated, then people who will make the first steps, and countries who make the first steps, seem to have a lot of costs and less benefits. And this is a very important power game, so to say. So here international cooperation must help. Maybe it's encouraging to know that in the OECD context last year, countries decided that they wanted to know more about the economics of climate change, which is not economic imperialism to environmental issues, but is about what are the right incentives and what are the ways in which you can go away of reforms in which different actors are encouraged to behave in the right way. And then you see that sometimes things like subsidies for R&D are a bad thing. Why? Because once a certain product or process is developed, the subsidy, and it is a success, the subsidy will be too expensive. When it is not a success, it is not a success, and when it is average, then innovation is stagnated. So better tax the bad ones, tax the carbon emissions, which in itself will be an incentive to more investment, to more research and investment, to new methods. A couple of months ago, I met in Europe someone from a leading innovation firm, and he said, well, it's the first time in history that we call, from the business side, we call for more regulation on environmental issues. Why? He said, because we are there to develop these new methods, these new production methods, but if it is not a level playing field, then we cannot deliver them to the market. So the call for more regulation is there already from the business side. We are moving in that direction, and hopefully we use the momentum of this crisis, where we have to make investments and we have to define directions for investment in a way that also other actors are encouraged to behave in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I'm John Buchanan from the Workplace Research Centre in the Economics and Business Faculty. I'd like to ask a bit more of a provocative question, if you like. I think through the 1980s, 1990s and into the 2000s, we've seen the ascendancy of what could be called an OECD orthodoxy in the realm of public policy. I think in the course of last year, we've seen the spectacular failure of the end result of that policy mix. And I'd be very interested to know what work the OECD is doing in actually reassessing the way it looks at the world. because I would argue that it's not a matter of fine-tuning, it's not a matter of fixing the tyre, as you mentioned. Is the OECD asking the basic question, do we have a sustainable business model within the core OECD countries? I think if we're to come out of crises of the magnitude we're in, we're not looking at fine-tuning, we're looking at a fundamental rethink. And my question is, to what extent is the OECD having a good hard look at itself, and is it posing the question, do we have a sustainable business model?
Well, thank you very much for that question. It's very apt. And the answer is yes, but also here maybe not enough. I can give you 3 examples. Firstly, the work of our competition division studied labour markets in a way that recognized already the huge risks in September 2007, directly for the complete scenario that is now revealing. But well, this is not to be proud to have success in that prediction, but it was referred to by Tim already. Secondly, we have been thinking: are we in OECD in our model? Are we measuring the right parameters, the right indicators? And the answer is maybe not, or at least we need more. Maybe we need to have not only public debt and but also private debt as one of the indicators that we monitor very closely. There is also the idea: what is really prosperity? Is that, can we make our voters and our citizens happy by an increase of 0.15% in GDP? Or what is it? So we are embarking in a huge project which is called Measuring Societal Progress, developing new indicators. And this is of great importance also for politicians and for governments, because they are accountable for what they deliver in their promises, and in their transaction with citizens they cannot deal with figures like economic growth or government debt or something like that. This is not to say that these are not important anymore, but we have to develop more indicators and to balance them in a way to serve our member states.
Tim or Peter, any comment?
Could I just pick up the environment and John Buchanan's question? On the environmental question, I think there's 2 important issues. One is symbolism does matter. When we did surveys of exporters and when we looked at Brand Australia, when we hadn't signed Kyoto, a lot of our exporting clients were frustrated because they had very strong environmental technology, but because we hadn't signed Kyoto, it was affecting our national brand. Last year, I went to a very quick Scandinavian trip to Denmark for the energy camp, and also Norway. I listened to Mamma Mia on the plane, so that sort of covered Sweden. But basically what I found at the energy camp, that Australia's brand in terms of environmental capacity had changed. You just had to see the Beijing Olympics to see the environmentally conscious architecture and a lot of water reticulation that we'd picked up from Sydney over in Beijing. So I think the symbolism matters, and that gives Australian exporters more opportunity to sell themselves. And I think when you read the Stern report, long as it is, most press reports were about what he said about the Great Barrier Reef, but if you look at the book, he's actually said that Australia has a great opportunity to help combat climate change through sustainable technologies in China and India, something that perhaps wasn't picked up more. On John's point, look, I can't speak for the OECD, but I know that the broad body of economists have had to eat a lot of humble pie on the causes of the global financial crisis. And if you look, like I do, at the issues of trade and the labour market, I think the economic history of Australia and also the types of studies that the OECD shows, is that you can support open trade, reducing tariffs and providing a more liberal investment regime, while at the same time supporting strong labour market institutions that protect workers on equity and efficiency grounds. And I think they're completely consistent positions. And I think one reason that economists lost their way in the globalisation debate is that they didn't understand how the labour market worked in terms of outcomes, but also in terms of building constituencies for free trade.
Art, yes, please.
Just very briefly, John. Of course, we need to keep our policy settings under ongoing review and attention, and events like the ones we're experiencing at the moment, absolutely place that obligation on us and sharpen us up and force us to stand up and question a lot of things. But I think that the OECD's policy settings are fundamentally right. The type of things that moved us out of the recession of the early 90s, that helped us withstand the Asian downturn, the late 90s, are consistent with the OECD's policy settings, and I think are consistent with the type of policy settings that we need now. But that's not to say that we don't need to question a range of matters, but I do come back to the very first point I made in my remarks. A proper diagnosis of the causes of the problem needs to be undertaken before we start altering the policy settings which in the past have worked for us.
Thank you. Art, I'd like to ask the effect on developing countries. I mean, OECD has taken a strong lead in recent years in international cooperation, as you've said. It's included not just the fiscally conservative rich country economies, but now 6 or 8 new economies, a dozen. But is this going to alter the nature of the beast? Is this going to weaken the fiscally strong approach? And how will that help achieving, say, the Millennium Development Goals or international responsibility of the rich nations to the poor?
Wow.
Small question.
Isn't there a rule that someone who moderates cannot ask questions?
I've been saving that up for a while.
The Millennium Development Goals are goals on a level that is somewhat more abstract than the level on which OECD works. Maybe that is because that is the reason there is a broad agreement on the MDG, on the Millennium Development Goals, and that is maybe also why it is rather difficult to transform them to concrete policy actions. But this is not the level where OECD has its strengths. We are very evidence-based, analytical, and we try to be relevant in policy recommendations, so we start at the other end of them. And that nature of the beast will not change. What could change is the relative importance of principles. And when we speak about this fiscal policy, fiscal sustainability, is of course very important, and it is key, it is major. I referred to it in my speech. And when a country becomes a member of OECD, the country is asked to express himself toward the OECD acquis, so to say. So that is what has been discussed in OECD until now. So for membership, among our members, these key values will not change. The other thing is that we are running out of time in engaging with these emerging economies. And not only the bigger ones, but also the smaller African ones and the Southeast Asian countries. So in the meantime, OECD has a development center dealing with development in other parts of the world. We work also with World Bank in that sense. So in that sense, let us be happy that we change a little bit to, or maybe much, to really to engage with this world, and that should also question some of our basic assumptions, and it should also question maybe our models. And here the real question is not if we decide on the menu and then invite someone else to take a place on our table, but it is about how can we work with new emerging economies to define even the menu and to define the table. Otherwise, there will not be an equality. This growing unequal idea in the world is reported in a recent report of OECD in October 2008. The inequalities in the world are widening, both between countries and inside countries. And this report, Growing Unequal, is a strong incentive to go the humble path of mutual relations in a broader sense. I can recommend you the OECD website where you can, if you just Google on Growing Unequal, you will find that report. And this was not welcomed by all our member countries. But it is our role to do independent research, and our findings are, well, the truth never lies. This is maybe what you say in Latin here. I don't know what it is, but the truth will never lie. So let us stay to the data and the analysis.
Thank you.